culminated in the death of Tupac Shakur, who was, at the time, the most famous rapper perhaps in the country or the world. And to this day, there are still bad feelings and rumors about exactly who was involved in all this.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And, you know, to think about the fact that 30 years later, here we are, and just blocks away from where he was murdered, trial is taking place. Yeah. And so, yes, I think that there's going to be, you know, the questioning of the jury with respect to what they knew about the 90s, how they felt about Tupac, right? Whether they have any biases associated with that, because it's been a long time coming. And so the fact is that when you get a rapper of this notoriety at the time who's gone, could there be people who just want accountability? All that will be vetted through the jury. However, when you look and examine it, right, we go back to the fact that you had this statement, do we finally get justice for Tupac? The defense is going to argue, where's your murder weapon? Where's the Cadillac I was in, right? They're going to make arguments as to where are the other witnesses? Where's your DNA evidence? Where are your forensics? And so it's going to be a true battle between the two. And I think the way you get to a right place is by vetting the jury to ask them questions about the 90s, to ask them questions about their feelings, to ask them about their biases. So when you impanel a jury of 12 and multiple alternates, you can get people who can assess the case based upon the facts and nothing but the facts, so help you. Raise your right hand.
That's right. We will wait and see, but this is going to be widely watched because there are still films being made about what happened in 1996 to Tupac Shakur and who was really behind it. We may never know, but this might tell us some details. Thank you so much, Joey Jackson. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Nearly 30 years after one of hip-hop's most influential artists was killed, the long-awaited trial for the murder of Tupac Shakur finally getting underway today with jury selection. Tupac Shakur was killed in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas in 1996 at the height of his career. Dwayne Davis is the only person that's ever been charged in connection with his death. He has pleaded not guilty to one count of murder with the use of a deadly weapon. Davis is not accused of being the person who actually pulled the trigger. Rather, prosecutors say he helped orchestrate the shooting. I spoke with Tupac Shakur's stepbrother about how he feels going into this trial. Do you think that Tupac's murder has finally been solved?
Almost.
We're
almost there.
Why do you say that?
Well, the guy said he did it. He said he did it. Rhodey did it.
Right.
Or was part of what happened there. And now he's saying he didn't. So we'll see in court. I don't know.
Our Nick Watt is watching all of this and gives us a sense of what we can expect from the trial.
Hey, Keith, Metro Police, come over here.
Dwayne Keith Davis, a.k.a. Keefy D, was arrested 3 years ago.
So what they got you for, man?
Oh, man. Biggest case in Las Vegas history.
Oh, yeah?
The shooting, the killing of Tupac Shakur at a stoplight in Vegas late one night after a Mike Tyson fight nearly 30 years ago. Back then, many thought Tupac's death was down to the East Coast-West Coast rap rivalry that had flared up in the early 90s. Just 3 months before he was killed, Tupac released Hit 'Em Up, dissing and threatening his friend turned rival Biggie Smalls and other East Coast rappers.
West side, when we ride, come equipped with game. You claim to be a player, but I your wife. We bust on bad boys.
Biggie was gunned down and killed 6 months after Tupac. No one has ever been charged with his murder. But here's what prosecutors will argue at Keefy D's trial that starts this week, detailed by a homicide detective just after Dwayne Davis, Keefy D's, arrest.
As we all know, Tupac Shakur was an artist who was signed with Death Row Records. And that Death Row Records and its CEO, Marion Suge Knight, were closely affiliated with the Mob Piru criminal street gangs, and that they had an ongoing feud with the Southside Compton Crips. Dwayne Davis was the leader and shot caller of the Southside Compton Crips.
Members of both gangs were, say police, at the Tyson fight in the MGM Grand that night. And afterwards, in the lobby, Tupac, Knight, and others spotted Keefy D's nephew, Orlando Anderson, and beat him up.
Little did anyone know that it is this incident right here that would ultimately lead to the retaliatory shooting and death of Tupac Shakur. Dwayne Davis began to devise a plan to obtain a firearm and retaliate against Suge Knight and Mr. Shakur for what occurred inside the hotel against Mr. Anderson.
Anderson, his uncle Keefe D, and 2 other men allegedly got into a white Cadillac and followed Knight and Tupac, who were in a black BMW en route to a club. Investigators allege it was Anderson who actually pulled the trigger.
Were you involved in any way in the death of Tupac Shakur?
No, I was not involved.
Anderson was shot and killed 8 months after that interview with CNN. Keefe D is the only man who was in that white Cadillac who is still alive. He's now 63. No one says he pulled the trigger, but he was, they say, the shot caller. And under Nevada law, he can still be charged with murder.
Within the first few months of the investigation, our detectives
Communicate in over 65 languages with Gemini and Google Workspace. Translate all your meetings and messages in real time with AI in Google Meet and Chat. Understand each other instantly with Google Workspace.
to his involvement in this homicide investigation that he provided to numerous different media outlets.
He described the moment he says he handed Anderson, who he calls Lane, a gun while riding in the white Cadillac. It's in audio featured in the documentary Murder Rap, inside the Biggie and Tupac murders.
I gave it to Dre, and Dre was like, no. And Lane's like, you, Papa, dude.
But in July, Keefe D denied being involved in the killings, telling a Las Vegas news station he wasn't even in Nevada when Tupac was killed. Suge Knight is also still alive, right now serving 28 years for manslaughter in an unrelated case. He's on the prosecution's witness list.
I ain't worried about I ain't did.
Well, I mean, that's what court's for, right?
Tupac died 6 days after he was shot. And now, nearly 30 years later, Keefe D gets his day in court.
Nick Watt, CNN, Los Angeles.
The long-awaited and much talked about trial for the murder of Tupac Shakur is finally getting underway in a Las Vegas courtroom. Jury selection set to begin this morning in just a bit of time here. Tupac Shakur was killed in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas nearly 30 years ago at the height of his career. Dwayne Keefe D. Davis is the only person ever charged in connection with his death. He has pleaded not guilty to 1 count of murder with the use of a deadly weapon. Now, Davis, who was arrested in 2023, is not actually being accused of pulling the trigger. He's not considered the gunman. Rather, prosecutors say he helped orchestrate the shooting, providing the gun to the gunman. Davis, as we mentioned, pleading not guilty now.
So what they got you for, man?
Biggest case in Las Vegas history.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Like recent?
September 7th, 1996. I ain't worried about I ain't did.
Joining me now, CNN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney Joey Jackson. That is one of the examples, before we get into this, one of the examples is whatever you say to the police can be recorded and used against you if you're read your Fifth Amendment rights. But before all that, they can use this if they wanted to, right?
Oh, without question, Sarah. Good morning to you. And interestingly enough, in this case, he is the best witness. He is the star witness in the case. Why? Because of the various statements that he's made regarding the case. You know, it's going to turn a lot on this 2008 proffer session that he had with law enforcement. Right. What is a proffer session? You usually go into those and law enforcement asks you questions, prosecutors do, and it doesn't see the light of day. You're given immunity. But in this instance, the argument is that he waived that immunity because he's made so many public statements with regard to his involvement, not only on podcasts and other areas of media. He's written a book with regard to that. And so the defense said, no, we don't want to let this in, but the judge said it can be let in and it will be let in. And it's important, Sarah, because what he said to the police, they're going to argue, prosecutors, that it corroborates his involvement and it corroborates his guilt. And as you noted at the outset, they didn't say he pulled the trigger, but you don't have to establish that, just that you aided, you abetted, you counseled, you encouraged, and that's what they're saying he did here.
And look, the other people who were under suspicion by police, one of whom was his relative, have all passed away. He is the only only person sort of left in this scenario who's accused of being there that day and taking part in all this. I do want to ask you about the bigness of this case, because he is not wrong that this is one of the biggest cases ever in Las Vegas, because of who was killed and because of all of the rumors around who was responsible. There was this big feud going on between East and West Coast rappers, and that has just taken on a life of its own. Finding these 12 jurors, especially if they're of a certain age, they would know about this case. How difficult do you think that will be?
So always challenging, but certainly there are mechanisms in place for that. And what are those mechanisms? Remember, Sarah, that you can challenge. They'll probably get, I'm thinking, you need 12 jurors, of course, to sit in the box, but they'll likely get between 4 and 6 alternates in case someone gets sick. So when you're picking a jury, what happens is you're asking them questions. Do you know about the case? Do you have any opinions about the case? Do you know who Tupac was? Did you really admire him as a rapper? Do you think someone should be held accountable, even if the evidence doesn't establish it? You're going to ask all those questions. But when you're actually picking a jury, if a juror says they're biased, you can excuse them. It's called excusing for cause, and that's unlimited. But then there are these other challenges called peremptory challenges, in the weeds a little bit, but each side gets 8 of those, and you could excuse someone for any reason or no reason, as long as it's not predicated upon some type of racial reason, et cetera, for which you're excusing them. And so therefore, yes, of course, it'll be a challenge. I think they could get it done, because the main question is, even if you heard about the case, can you base a decision on the facts and the evidence of the circumstances in the courtroom, not what you read in the paper or saw anywhere else? So it's on today.
Lastly, this happened almost 30 years ago. How difficult is it to bring a case like this, with the idea that there is a book out there published by the person on trial, and there's a lot of comments, which a lot of people say, well, that's the reason why this has happened in the first place, because Dwayne KVD kept talking about it.
Yeah, so I think it's very challenging, right? I know we're in a day and age, certainly, where there are cold cases, and that's why there's no statute of limitations on murder. You can bring it 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, like here, or even more. And I think from the defense perspective, they're going to argue you don't have a weapon, you don't have the car, ballistics wasn't done on that, there's no further doing here, will say prosecutors, and if those statements are credited and believed, then the defense has a problem. In the event that that's all they got, which the defense will argue, then that creates another story, perhaps reasonable doubt.
The judge letting it in because he kept talking about it. Kept, as people say in the streets, talking smack, and then this ends up being part of his case. It'll be interesting to see if he himself testifies, because in some ways he's already testifying with the words that he has already used in public, right?
Exactly.
There is
he
a
says
lot.
He's not going to testify, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see.
Jury selection begins today for the man charged in Tupac Shakur's 1996 shooting death on that Las Vegas Strip. Now, the prosecution will focus on his 2019 memoir, where they say Davis implicated himself. Davis has pleaded not guilty, and legal experts have said that his defense may try to show that past statements are false.
What he said 30 years ago, got money for war, can't feed the poor. That's still relevant. That's still active, relevant, current statement today, you know, and he has a lot of wisdom in his music.
It's been nearly 30 years since the murder of one of the most influential artists in history, and we're still asking who killed Tupac. Today, jury selection begins in the trial against the only person ever charged in his death, Dwayne Davis, who goes by the name Keefe D. He's not accused of pulling the trigger, but rather orchestrating the whole thing. Now, he was arrested back in 2023. Tupac Shakur was killed in a drive-by shooting near the Las Vegas Strip on September 7th, 1996. And Davis is one of the only people still alive who was at the scene of the crime, the other person being Suge Knight. And he's serving a 28-year prison sentence in another case. So today, that moment in history returns to the spotlight.
So what they got you for, man?
Biggest case in Las Vegas history.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Like recent?
September 7th, 1996. I ain't worried about it. I ain't kidding.
So joining me now, former federal prosecutor Elise Adamson. Welcome back. Okay, it's been a long time coming, because Keefe D's been running his mouth the entire time. I mean, just to be honest, he's been very candid about what has happened. I want to play an example from when he was
So what happens next?
And we just came, and I ain't gonna go into the details like that, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, you got it in a book.
He wrote a book, and then he said a ghostwriter wrote the book, and so he distanced himself from comments there. Is all of this just going to come up in the trial? Like, can they build a timeline based on everything he said publicly?
Oh, Audie, absolutely. This entire trial is brought compliments of the defendant himself, Mr. Davis, because had he not run his mouth, as you just said, and wrote a book and gone on all of these podcasts, the government wouldn't have enough evidence in this case. This entire case, the linchpin of this case, is the defendant's own confession, which was what makes this so interesting, because the prosecution essentially has to prove to the jury that Mr. Davis can be believed, that everything he said can be corroborated, because they really don't have anything else at this point.
One of the things they talked about was him speaking to investigators in, quote, a proffer. You'll probably explain what that is, back in 2008. And in the interview, he said Tupac had assaulted his nephew. And so that Davis says he got his nephew a gun, who then went on to shoot Tupac. And so he basically is talking about a motive and talking about the gunman. And then you mentioned witness, Suge Knight, but he's behind bars. Can they get Suge on the stand?
Well, they want to get Suge on the stand. He's on the prosecution's witness list, but he's already indicated that he's going to refuse to testify. So we're going to have to see what happens there. The proffer you mentioned, let's talk about that. So a proffer session, usually it's kind of an off-the-record conversation you have with authorities, and what authorities promise in exchange for information is that they're not going to prosecute you for anything you say in that room. But here's the important part, Audie, that Mr. Davis did not understand. That meant they couldn't prosecute him for things he said in that room during that session. People don't typically leave a proffer session and then write a tell-all book. And so he opened the door, that is something we say in trial, to all of this by then writing the book. And actually now they fought in court. Some of what he said in the proffer section might come out in the trial. So it's seeing the light of day.
So the minute he started to talk more, everything he said in that room became like, well, wait a second, we got to double check, and now you can say it out loud.
That's right.
Nearly 30 years after one of hip-hop's most influential artists was killed, the long-awaited trial for the murder of Tupac Shakur is finally getting underway, with jury selection beginning today. Shakur was killed in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas in 1996 at the height of his